screwing around and start!
PointyStarVio here. We're going to be doing quote-unquote Charmer update. I'm calling this like CharmBlade turbo kind of control because it's really interesting, but it's a deck I've been wanting to show you. As you can clearly see from the side view, it's more than 40 cards. I'll explain some cards that you could change if you wanted to try and make it 40 cards, but I've never bricked with this deck, and I've dueled way too much recently. I'm gonna have to ignore some of the banging because people upstairs are being kind of loud right now, but there's two cards in here that I accidentally left somewhere else, but I'll just explain those cards when I get to them. So we're going to start off. Our Tremor count is 2 copies of Araya, 2 copies of Wind, 1 Hita, 1 Dark. You really use these guys for the difference of attribute, so I just used my favorite ones at 2 and 1 of these guys. You could really just go 1 of each attribute and then a second one of Wind just because of that, but you only really need the 6 of them. You kind of want to deal with the 2 of each, or you want to keep at least 6 cards, maybe 5 in your deck for the trap, so that way you have 2-to-1 ratio. Next we're running the Clown Engine, 3 copies of Damage Juggler, 2 copies of Clown, 2 copies of Hat Trigger. So Damage Juggler is the whole, if you take damage, you can negate the damage, discard him. Also you can banish him to search for the other clowns. Trick Clown says you can special summon him by taking 1,000 damage, which kind of works with some of the synergy of the deck. And then Hat Trigger just says if there are 2 or more monsters anywhere on the field, special summon them for free. So you know, that's the whole of the Clown Engine. Everything so far has been Spellcaster. So this next portion is sort of like Spellcaster support. We are running 3 copies of Gigabyte, 1 copy of Nari Fire, 1 copy of Nefarious Archfiend Eater, Nefariousness. If you were playing this build, you wanted to cut the list back a little bit, you could easily drop a Gigabyte and you could easily drop an Nari Fire, just to kind of drop those 2 out. I would suggest keeping the 1 Nefarious, 2 of these, just because they're really, really good that way, and this cuts your list about 2 cards. Next we're running 2 copies of Gothenburg. This card lets you get some plays out if your hands are a little strange, as well as it's a roto target, so I'm playing the roto to search for it. It just gets multiple cards out and it lets you get your plays going, as long as it's an additional free monster. Next we're playing 2 copies of Traptrix Murmillo. This was a most recent addition. What the Murmillo does is it basically allows you to set up a more defensive play on the first turn, and if you're going second you can normal summon her. You can use the Hat Trigger, and the Hat Trigger just allows you to combo off because it's a Spellcaster, so even though she's an insect, it still works. This card just really allows you to get into the traps, and when I'm playing more cards, I actually cut some room for this card so I could get to the traps to help stop the summons. So you know, it adds a really huge portion of control to the deck. Sorry about bumping the camera there. 2 copies of Mathematician. You could easily drop the Murmillos, and if you did, I would suggest getting another Mathematician in here just to kind of keep the consistency down, but the 2 works well as well. This is just a way to get the cards that you want in the graveyard, as well as keep your plays intact. The cards that you're running for graveyard is 1 Zephyros, 1 copy of Dragon, and 1 copy of Thousand Blades. So Dragon is a Spellcaster, so it has synergy if you draw him. Plus you can send it as a space. Thousand Blades is one of the main cards of the deck. If you send him to the graveyard, if you use the Zephyros or the Clown's effect, he gets a free summon out. And that's why I like the Zephyros as well. I one time, a late game, top decked a Mathematician, sent the Zephyros, paid the 400, bounced the Mathematician, because I only had about 1,000 life points left. I was able to pay 400 instead, bounce Math, summon Zephyros, summon Thousand Blades, because this is when you take damage, and Zephyros says take 400 damage. So yeah. That's the monster count. We're running a high monster count. Cards you could easily drop would be like 1 Gigabyte, 1 copy of the Inari Fire, and you could drop like the Dragon and stuff. I am technically running 2 Jurigato. I do not have those with me. I gave those to Matt and Zach so that way they could use them, as well as we only have a couple between us for all of our decks. Jurigato is a good card for the deck because it's a 3,000 extra life points and you do pay a lot, as well as it's a buff for when you need to attack over problematic cards. I'm letting you know so you can run it. It'll probably be in the description in the video below, but I don't have the card with me. For spells running 2 Instant Fusion, yes, Nodin's OP, and since this deck is 99% level 4 monsters, Nodin is always live, and the 1,000 damage from this, or 1,000 pay, is nothing at all. 2 space, you could easily drop 1 of the space, especially if you're running Dragon. If you're not running Dragon, you would still want to keep 1 to 2 in there. But it's just a way to kind of keep the deck down and keep your opponent's back row in check. 1 Foolish, 1 Rhoda for deck then. You're only running 3 Warriors, but most of the time you're going to want to search for Gothenburg. But if you already have the Gothenburg, there's no problem, like nothing wrong with using Rhoda to search for the 1,000 Blades to summon Gothenburg and Exceed. Book of Moon and Gaga, you could easily drop Book. As good as the card it is, the deck has a lot of speed and control that you don't really need the Book in order to keep the deck list low. Moving on to traps, Unpossessed is one of the main ones that you'll be running. This card says if any monster ever dies, you can turn it into a Charmer because it says 1500 defense. You can summon an attack or defense face down. And it also gives Charmers plus 800, or the familiar possessed 800 attack if they declare an attack. So this turns all your monsters into pluses. If your opponent attacks into a Gigabyte, then you can do that. A really solid first turn play is something like normal summon Math, send something, special summon Gigabyte, and then just kind of set this trap. Your opponent attacks into either one, and you're either going to get a summon of this card or Inari Fire off of Gigabyte. You're going to get draw off Mathematician. You're going to get a summon off Unpossessed and constantly have an advantage. We're doing the 2 Call the Haunted. I actually only recently put this in because I can use Zephyros to bounce this card to get this card back, as well as Zephyros to summon out the 1,000 Blades, and it's a nice little combo you can do late game. You could also bounce the Unpossessed, but a big thing is the Call the Haunted actually gives you an immediate plus, as well as you can Call the Haunted, summon back from your graveyard the copy of Murmillo, and get that space effect, which is really strong. We recently cut Dionea. If we had Lavalval chained to 1, we would be running Dionea. Probably, but without it, it's just not as live of a card. For stable traps, we're running Bottomless, Trap Tricks, Trap Hole Nightmare, and the Time Space, because we want to have the 3 trap holes for the Trap Tricks Murmillos to search. These cards are the best ones that we have available to us. If we have multiple Bottomless, I'd probably play a second Bottomless instead of Trap Tricks, Trap Hole Nightmare. But these ones at 1-ofs, all are always there for when you need them against the opponent's back row, and you search for the one that you need when you need it. For generic staple traps, we are running 1 copy of Compulse, 1 copy of Torrential, 1 copy of Rain Destruction, and 1 copy of Warning. Now you could easily end the list here. You don't really need some of the cards like the trap lineup. You don't have to run Compulse, you don't have to run the Call the Haunted, and you do not have to run the Trap Tricks, Trap Hole Nightmare. You could easily drop cards like that, maybe even Ring of Destruction, or things of the sort. And what these cards would allow you to do is get the list down a little bit. A card that I could suggest playing is cards like Soul Transition. I was totally just messing around with 1 in the deck, but you could easily play this card, but you would have to be careful with it. So Soul Transition says, if you control no special summon monsters, tribute a level 4 normal set or summoned monster, draw 2 cards. So you can use this card with any of your normal summons, and you can just get cards like 1,000 Blades into the graveyard, or just anything of the sort, and get your draws off really early. It's a good solid first turn play. But the thing is, if you're running more kind of a higher card count, you wouldn't want to do this because you're going to want to mainly go into your extra deck. I just figured I'd show you the option. Going into the extra deck, we're going to start off with King of the Feral Imps, because the card Gigabyte is a reptile monster. You can open up with this and get King of the Feral Imps really easily, and so you're going to want to try and do that. It keeps your hand presence there, and you don't ever go minus because of it. For Summon Engagement, we have 1 Arc, 2 copies of Cast Out, or not Summon, but Field Control, and a Direwolf. I put Direwolf in recently because if you're going off, you will always have a free XYZ with how the engine works, and you can Direwolf to pop one of their back row. It really does work, and it allows you to get those pushes off that you want. For more of like tech kinds of cards, we are running Abyss Dweller to stop the opponents, and a Degusto Emerald to kind of control like what you have, try and get your graveyard back set up and your XYZs back in the extra deck for later. For Gagas, we are running a Samurai because this card actually does push for game a lot in this deck. You can get a lot of really strange weak monsters out and be able to pull out a Samurai, and even things like Rhapsody, and just buff them to insane attacks. Sorry about that, and then just kind of win. As well as Cowboy, if you happen to get both out, you can get this guy and run into multiple 3,000 beaters, or less than 3,000, and just kind of clear a field in a really nice way. Plus, the Cowboy for game is really good. Rhapsody, a lot of cards like having things that activate in the graveyard, but we have to have it there just so we can keep those banishes, as well as this deck alone is able to pull out multiple XYZs in 1 turn, up to 3, even a potential 4 if you have the right cards and right combos. And you make Samurai insanely strong and win really easily with that. As well as I do like the Ragna's Hero because I feel Ragna's Hero is really good for the deck of if you face anything that boosts attacks, you can Ragna's Hero get a free plus out, and that's just something really nice. I have the Dark Rebellion XYZ Dragon. I didn't have an Exciton with me, but I feel like Exciton is a better choice here because if you are in that situation, pulling an Exciton, detaching something like a Clown, blowing up your opponent's field, taking 1,000 damage and summoning Clown is just a really strong way of kind of helping fight your opponent without hurting anything else. And the XYZ Dragon's a cool card and all. I got the Platinum Rare from that tin, but I do feel like in the current game, the Exciton would be better here. I'm also playing the one copy of Toros because of the new little ruling that they confirmed that you can't activate a card for no reason on your opponent's turn. What's really cool is as long as you have Toros out, you're guaranteed your XYZ effects. So how the ruling went was you cannot respond to anything, you have to respond to an effect. So if I summon Toros, you can't just chain Compulse after the summon is successful. There is no chaining window. Now if I summon another card, they could chain it on Toros. Well, they couldn't chain it to Toros because you can't add cards and effects when a card is summoned. But if I were to summon, let's say, Ragna 0, I could activate Ragna's effect and they could chain and compulse Toros, but they can't stop me from actually summoning the Toros out. So once Toros hits the field, you've got complete control. And then the last two slots, I'm running to Norden because we have the Instant Fusion. I know people want to call it Norden, but technically it's Norden, so you know. Norden is a good card because it pulls back your level 4s. You can get back the Clown if it died, and XYZ, and then detach the Clown, and Clown will trigger again. So this will just keep keep your plays going, and this Instant Fusion allows for OGKs. That is this little CharmBlade Clown Turbo deck. For siding, you can really run a lot of things, but I just wanted to get this deck out there. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and all that, and as always, have a wonderful day. Yeah.